Giuliani is pleading not guilty to charges in the Georgia election case. The former attorney for Donald Trump is accused of trying to illegally overturn results of the 2020 election in the state. Giuliani waived his right to appear at an arraignment hearing set for next Wednesday. He is facing 13 charges, including violations of Georgia's anti-racketeering law. He joins the former president and at least 10 others in not appearing before a judge in a crowded courtroom with cameras. There's been, of course, a lot of movement in this week regarding Georgia's 2020 election interference case, but the biggest news was a trial date for Trump. He will appear in court for a different charge for trying to overturn the 2020 election. And that's going to come just a day before Super Tuesday, when voters in 14 states will cast their primary ballots.
Joining us to discuss the trial date and its potential impacts is WGN political analyst Paul Lisnek. Thank you, sir.
Hi, guys. Good to see you.
Let's talk about that D.C. case, which has been scheduled for March 1st. That's one day before Super Tuesday, we should say.
March 4th, yeah.
Yeah, what did I say? March 4th.
Yeah.
March
sure.
4th, okay. One day before Super Tuesday, okay. A lot of people think that he has the nomination locked up, so why is this really an issue, the March 4th
Well,
date?
because what they're thinking is because March 5th is Super Tuesday.
Right.
And so the question is, how can they get in the way of his campaigning for Super Tuesday? But you're right. Prior to that, we've had New Hampshire, we've had Iowa, we've had South Carolina, and if Trump goes the way things are going for him right now, he could have it locked up, or pretty much be the presumptive nominee prior to Super Tuesday, so it much not matter. What's interesting, Micah, is the fact that Judge Chutkan, when she set the date, she didn't say anything about, and the next day Super Tuesday or anything like that. I mean, it's very clear she doesn't pay any attention to the political process. She's doing the date she thinks. Part of this may be Trump's
She's doing her job.
Well, she's doing her job, and also maybe doing Trump's team kind of reflecting their attitude, because she said to them when they asked for a date 2 years away, and she said, give me another date. That doesn't work. And his lawyer said, no, I'm not going to give you another. We need 2 years. And I think she just said, the heck with this. Here's your date, March 4th.
Well, the Fulton County judge just said, I think it was Wednesday, that cameras can be in the courtroom for that case here. Also have it live streamed. What do you think will be the impact as that case goes forward?
Yeah, Ray, that becomes a major thing because, first of all, we don't know who is going to be in the Georgia, and that's a Georgia state case. We know that right now there's people like Mark Meadows and others who are trying to make Jeff Clark trying to get into federal court. And if they get into federal court, no cameras. So we can be sure that Trump is going to make that same motion because none of them actually want this to be on camera or seen by the public.
Even Trump?
He won't want it. I know typically you'd want to see it, but the kind of evidence that's going to come in that case and whatever is not going to be good for him most likely. So I think he would probably prefer that it not be on camera. This allows his team to go out and play to the cameras after every day of trial and say everything went great and everything's lovely. But imagine if he is in the Georgia case and kept in the state and it is on trial for the first time in our history. But Americans probably deserve the right to see a former president on trial, whether you believe it's right or wrong or he should have been tried. It's not the point. The point is it's a president on trial and we ought to be able to see it. There will be motions to ask the federal judge to allow cameras if he gets the case removed to federal court, but the odds of that happening are very small.
So that's the only reason why, for instance, former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows wants it moved to federal court and eventually maybe Trump, because of the television?
Well, there's another
coverage?
reason, which is it's the jury pool.
Okay.
Because if you're in the state court, you have just this sort of Fulton County area jury, and it's very pro-Biden, basically. It's anti-Trump. But if you get into federal court, it spreads out the amount. Federal courts take in more territory. So now you've got a lot of rural areas and the odds are that you get more Trump-supporting people who could be on the jury. Of course, any of that assumes that we can't trust jurors and jurors don't do their jobs. Having been a jury consultant for 30 years of my life, jurors do the right thing. They make mistakes, but generally jurors take their job seriously. And the fact that they happen to be a Republican or a Democrat ahead of time does not usually get in the way of them listening to the evidence and doing their job.
Let's get back to Giuliani, who I just indicated has pleaded not guilty. Sort of as a sidebar, he just lost his defamation suit for remarks that he made about the election workers. And what do you think the damages could be there? Tens of millions of dollars?
Absolutely could be in the tens of millions, and he'll have to declare bankruptcy, and none of that's ever going to get paid. There's something really interesting about that, though. Giuliani, the reason that he defaulted in this case, essentially there wasn't a jury, people said that I missed that trial. No, they didn't have a trial. The judge basically said, you have not turned over information you've been ordered to turn over, you lose. And now it's how much of the damages. The question it put in my mind, why didn't he turn this over? So was it an issue of cost and can't afford lawyers? That could be one possibility, although he did take a private plane to Atlanta, so I don't know about that. Or secondly, maybe he decided that the information he would have turned over would have been so damaging that better off to take the hit in the civil case than to turn it over in the criminal case. I'm speculating, but that would certainly be one explanation for why he didn't turn it over.
We'd have to turn that over, though, in the criminal case, wouldn't he?
Well, I mean, why didn't he turn it over? Does he say it doesn't exist? I mean, we don't know the details of why it wasn't turned over, just that he didn't turn it over.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, for the second time this month, freezes up in front of
Yeah.
the press. A lot of questions about his health. Joe Biden, President Biden, saying he talked to him, he sounded like his old self. But there are questions about Joe Biden's health as well, and people like Dianne Feinstein. So what does this mean as far as the elderly who are serving for us right
you know,
now?
the average age among senators is 64, which sounds young to me, but that's the average age among senators. And the bottom line is there's talk again, renewed talk of we need term limits. We need to, actually there was one congressman years ago who actually put a bill forth that basically said, okay, you can run, but we won't pay you after 12 years. That was kind of interesting. Got a couple of votes, didn't go anywhere. The bottom line is that it is very difficult for them. You're never going to get anything passed. And, some people say, look, let McConnell's constituents, they're the ones that put him there. He's up again.
Again, they put him there again.
Exactly, and they're up again in 26, I think is his next. So he's not going to run in 26. I think we can be fairly safe that he'll retire. The question is whether he stays in leadership until then. And what's interesting is Biden wants him in leadership, even though he was masterful in how he handled the Supreme Court issue and why the court looks the way it does. But Biden can work with him. He can't work as well with McCarthy. And so that's why I think you'll see Mitch McConnell, try to stay on. Right now, if he goes, they're called the Johns. There's 3 Johns who could step into that role. The most likely is John Thune. But the bottom line is there's it's very, very sensitive and difficult. Mitch McConnell's going to have to make the call. My guess, he doesn't want to step down.
For the second time this year, Paul, we are facing a budget crisis. If Congress doesn't act, the government runs out of money.
Yeah.
I think it's September 24th.
What's interesting, on my show over the last few weeks, I had Senator Durbin on, I had Congressman Sean Casten and Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy, and I asked every one of them that question. What about, you got to have the budget going. Durbin said, I don't know what's going to happen. And the congressman said, I'm worried about this. So nobody came up and said, don't worry, we'll make it happen, we'll get there. And there's a couple of problems going on. Number one, it's because of the Freedom Caucus members on the Republican side. Marjorie Taylor Greene did a speech just the other day for her constituents and said, I'll tell you right now, I'm a no vote if there's money for Ukraine, if there aren't all these other social issues that aren't addressed. So she's not budging. And I think several others feel that way as well. The bottom line is Kevin McCarthy can't lose it, but I think he's going to also get deterred. Something else that we need to keep our eye on, expect this Congress to go back, the House, and basically work to have an impeachment inquiry over Joe Biden, potentially to impeach Joe Biden. I think, and why do I say that? Aside from the fact that the Freedom Caucus is screaming for it, that's probably what Kevin McCarthy needs to do to get their votes on at least what's called a CR, a continuing resolution to get the government running for a period of more months. I think the only way he gets there is to say you can have your Biden inquiry. Now, whether it's an impeachment or just an inquiry, we don't yet.
September 30th, that is the date.
So it'll be, October 1st will be the new budget date.
What's coming up on your show Sunday?
Hey, so you know what? We had such great response, Micah, to my interview with Lori Lightfoot that it's Labor Day weekend. We thought, let's rerun it. So we're going to rerun the Lightfoot
So you're
interview.
pretty much taking a vacation this weekend.
I will be watching that show. I'm coming to your house for the barbecue. That's why we did a rerun
Mimosas.
for it. And I'm making mimosas. And I do want to note that next Wednesday, when I do the midday show and I do the midday fix segment, I'll be interviewing David Pepper, who wrote a book called Saving Democracy. And he's going to talk about what everybody has to do individually to help save democracy in our country. That's Wednesday at 12:15 on the midday.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Have a good
happy
weekend.
Labor Day.
You
I'll
too.
see you for barbecue. I'm inviting myself, right?
Yeah.